A ship moving through the mountains sounds completely impossible, right? Until you see what China actually pulled off. They figured out how to take a 500-ton ship, lift it up, and carry it 200 meters high through the mountains. That's like hauling it up the height of a 60-story building. Chinese engineers built this insane system so ships can literally sail through the sky to get past the mountains. Instead of dragging boats over land or forcing them through a million locks, they made it so the ship gets lifted up, sails across, goes into another lift, and keeps going like it's no big deal. And they only built this thing because they had a serious problem. A massive dam had basically cut the river in half, two completely different water levels. Ships couldn't get through anymore, so China had two options: let the river turn into a dead end, or build one of the weirdest engineering projects on the planet. To get why this thing even exists, we first need to understand what happens when you suddenly split a river right down the middle. Dams are actually pretty useful. They make electricity, control floods, store water for cities and farms, all good stuff. But there is also a massive problem with them. A dam doesn't just hold back water. It creates a giant concrete wall right in the middle of the river. On one side, the water piles up into a huge reservoir. On the other side, the river drops way down, sometimes 100 meters or more. For cars or trains, no big deal. You build a bridge or a tunnel, but for ships, total nightmare. Ships can't climb waterfalls. They can't drive up hills, and they definitely can't just take another route when the whole valley is blocked by a concrete monster. So suddenly, the river gets split into two completely separate rivers, one above the dam, one below it. Trade, cargo, transport, everything just stops. That was exactly the problem China was facing. And so they build one of the weirdest engineering projects on the planet. For centuries, engineers had a classic solution for this: locks, basically a water staircase for boats. Here's how it works. The ship sails into a chamber, the gates close, water rises or drains to match the new level, then the gates open and the ship sails out at the different height. Simple, effective, and it's been used all over the world for hundreds of years. China itself has a long history with these kinds of canal locks, but modern megadams made the problem way bigger. When the height difference is small, one or two locks are fine. But when you're dealing with a drop the size of a 30 or 40-story building, it gets ridiculous. You'd need a whole series of lock chambers in a row. That means tons of space, massive amounts of water, more gates, way more maintenance, and ships stuck waiting for hours just to get through. So Chinese engineers said screw that and went for something way more dramatic. Instead of making ships slowly climb a giant water staircase, what if you just put the entire ship in a massive elevator? The best example of this is the ship lift at the Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River, and this thing is no joke. It can lift vessels up to 3,000 tons. The ship sails into this giant water-filled chamber, basically a giant floating bathtub. That chamber is around 120 meters long, 18 meters wide, and 3.5 meters deep. But when you add the water, the chamber itself, and all the equipment, the total weight being lifted hits a mind-blowing 15,500 tons. They raise all of that, ship plus water and the chamber, 113 meters into the air. That's roughly the height of a 40-story building. Before this lift existed, ships had to go through a slow 5-stage lock system that could take up to 3.5 hours. With the ship lift, the whole process drops to about 40 minutes, and the actual lifting part only takes around 22 minutes. For passenger boats and smaller cargo ships, it's a game changer. Instead of crawling through lock after lock, they just take a straight vertical shortcut through the sky. That's why the Three Gorges ship lift became such a big symbol of Chinese engineering. They took one of the largest dams in the world and added this insane vertical navigation system to it. But even that isn't the strangest part of Chinese engineering. Because at Three Gorges, the ships get lifted right beside the dam. At another place, it looks like the ships are literally sailing through the sky. This one sits on the Wu River in Guizhou Province, southwest China. Super mountainous, steep and rough terrain, exactly the kind of place where normal river travel turns into a nightmare. The Gupatan Dam created a massive height difference, so China built this wild system that doesn't even feel like a normal canal. It feels more like an engineering puzzle stretched across the mountains. It was finished in 2021 and cost about $777 million. The system can handle ships up to 500 tons and lifts them a total of around 199 meters. That's over 650 feet, higher than a lot of skyscrapers. But it doesn't use just one lift. It uses 3 separate boat lifts. The first one raises the ship about 72 meters. The second one is the absolute monster. It lifts ships 127 meters in a single go, making it one of the tallest single boat lifts anywhere. Then the third one handles the final adjustment near the reservoir, up to around 47 meters. And between these lifts, the ships don't sail through normal canals. They travel across elevated aqueducts and through navigation tunnels. The whole route stretches about 2.3 kilometers. So, first of all, a ship enters the first lift, gets raised high into the mountains, sails across a water channel built way above the ground, goes into another lift, passes through a tunnel, and keeps going. It, like China, literally built a water road through the air. Now, you might be wondering, why not just build one massive lift and do the whole thing in one go? Wouldn't 3 separate lifts be more complicated? Actually, splitting it into stages makes the whole system way smarter and more efficient. Each lift can handle about 1,800 tons and moves at around 8 meters per minute. So a 500-ton ship only spends roughly 10 minutes at each stage getting raised or lowered. And because it's broken into sections, multiple ships can move through the system at the same time. One can be leaving the first lift while another is entering behind it, and a third is already cruising through the next part. Instead of one giant bottleneck, it works more like a smooth production line for boats. It's not highway fast, but for a river that's been cut off by a massive dam in the mountains, it's seriously efficient. This is what makes the project so different from a normal bridge or tunnel. China isn't just crossing the landscape, they're stacking the entire river vertically. But lifting hundreds or thousands of tons, ship, water, steel chamber, all of it, sounds completely impossible when you look at the numbers. Add wind, earthquakes, and constantly changing water levels, it gets very challenging. So how the hell do they do it without burning insane amounts of power? The secret is balance. A ship lift works more like a giant elevator than a crane. When the ship sails into the water-filled chamber, something cool happens thanks to Archimedes' principle. The ship pushes water out, so the total weight the system has to lift doesn't actually change that much. They balance the whole thing with massive counterweights, cables, drums, motors, and smart control systems. The motors aren't fighting the full dead weight like a crane would. They mostly just control the movement, handle friction, keep everything perfectly level, and stop it safely. It's still incredibly difficult, but it makes the impossible actually doable. The Three Gorges lift uses huge towers, counterweights, pulleys, and tons of safety backups. The Gupatan system relies on giant hoist cable drums and gearboxes around the chamber. Everything has to be controlled with crazy precision. If the chamber tilts even a little, the ship is in trouble. If the gates don't seal right, water can cause a disaster. If it moves too fast or stops too suddenly, the forces could wreck the whole structure. So these aren't just giant elevators, they're precision machines built at mega project scale. And China keeps building stuff like this because their geography basically forces them to think vertically. A lot of their big rivers run through crazy mountains and deep valleys. Dams are super important there for power and flood control. But once you build one, you risk cutting the river in half. So the real challenge isn't just building the dam, it's figuring out how to keep the river alive around the dam. That's what makes these projects so cool. They're not just flashy engineering for the sake of it. They're about keeping inland waterways connected, moving cargo, boosting local economies, and making tough mountain areas actually usable. So what do you think? Is this the future of river transport in mountainous areas, or is China just taking mega project engineering to the extreme? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more videos on the world's wildest mega projects and the crazy engineering behind them, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.